Hey everyone, today I'm going to be showing you how to make cinnamon rolls from scratch with a cream cheese icing. I'm going to be making mine in my Instant Pot, but this recipe works just fine if you're going to be making them in the oven. Instead of putting them in the Instant Pot, just put them in a glass pan, oiled, in the oven at 350 degrees until they're done. First, you're going to start off by activating your dry yeast. You'll start off with 3/4 cup of warm water, not hot, it'll kill the yeast, and 2 1/4 teaspoon or a little package of active dry yeast, and 1 tablespoon of white sugar. You'll let that mix, and you want to get that foamy. If it doesn't turn foamy within 5 minutes, you've killed the yeast. Start over. Meanwhile, you can get your dry ingredients ready. I'm using a cup of white rice flour and a cup of brown rice flour because I'm gluten-free. If you're not gluten-free, just use 2 cups of all-purpose flour. To that, you'll want to add 1/8 of a cup of white sugar, which I just added, and also 1 teaspoon of salt. And you want to give that a good mix. I'm going to be stirring that later. And next you want to get your wet ingredients ready. I start off with 1 egg, which is already in the cup. And to that I'm going to add a tablespoon of vegetable oil, and lastly I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of white vinegar. And you'll also want to give that a good mix. I forgot to add 2 teaspoons of xanthum gum. This is for getting a better texture for gluten-free baking. If you're using all-purpose flour, just leave that step out. And this is what your yeast should look like after 5 minutes. It gets really foamy. You add the yeast mixture to your dry ingredients. Followed by your wet ingredients. And you'll want to mix that up. If your dough is too dry, feel free to add more oil or water. Just add slowly. And if it's too wet, just add more flour, but not too much. And you'll want to knead that into a ball, and that has to rise for 1 hour. I just cover it up with a rag in a warm area. Next, you'll want to make your icing. In that bowl you just saw was a 1/4 cup of softened butter and a half package or 4 ounces of cream cheese. To that I'm going to add about 1 1/2 cups of powdered sugar. And you'll just want to mix that until you get a texture that you like. If you add more powdered sugar, like it gets really dry, feel free to add milk. You can also add vanilla or citrus zest. It makes a really good icing. I just didn't have it at the time. And next, you'll want to roll out your dough after it's risen. You can either use a rolling pin, or I used a oiled cup. And before this step, I forgot to show it, I made a brown sugar filling, and that's a 1/4 cup of melted butter with a 1/2 cup of packed brown sugar. And to that I added pumpkin spice or cinnamon, whichever one you have. And you'll want to spread that out on your rectangle of dough. And I cut it into 8 slits. I cut in half, and I keep cutting those halves in half until I get 8 rolls. And you just roll them up. And you want to get a greased pan. This pan that I'm using fits in my Instant Pot. I put one roll in the center and put the other 7 around it like a flower. And you want to let that rise for 30 minutes. After that, cover it with foil, and it's ready to go in the Instant Pot. Make sure you have 2 cups of water in the bottom. All you have to do is heat it pressure cook for 30 minutes. After that cooks, let the pressure release naturally for 10, and they're done. Just be careful when you open an Instant Pot or an oven. They're hot. You don't want to get burned by the steam. The same thing when you open the foil. It's also hot, so open it away from you. And these cinnamon rolls are worth the wait. I know you have to let the dough rise for 1.5 hours total, but let me tell you, it's worth it. Especially with the frosting. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks for listening and watching.